Okay, and in our final Quebec-focused presentation, we have Jonathan Buick, the CEO of soon-to-be renamed Idaho Champion. John, we've known each other some 15 years, and I knew you had some kind of cobalt, and I wasn't so focused on that, but you reached out in November when you picked up some properties in Quebec. We're going to talk about here now, in between Patriot and Winsome. And I think we just heard from Patriot, we just heard from Winsome, and now we're going to hear from Champion. I mean, these are three great names of companies, right? You know, the champions of the James Bay region, newly prospective, hopefully, tier one spodumene deposits to be discovered. Idaho Champion is listed on the Canadian Stock Exchange, ticker symbol ITKO. Currently has about a 20 million Canadian market cap. So why don't you just introduce yourself a little bit, Jonathan, and how this kind of came about, and Rodney will ask you some questions.
Sure. Thanks, Howard. And thank you, Rodney. Also in the OTC, GLDRF is the ticker for our U.S. investors. So my background is capital markets, advisory firm, have raised over $400 million for junior mining companies, with about $100 million of that coming out of Korea and Japan, and some long-term relationships there. Worked in Korea for over 22 years. Within those transactions, 4 of those have been battery metals transactions. And so we certainly understand who the end users are. As a origins of the company, we started with 2 gold projects and 4 cobalt properties in Idaho. I made a new discovery at one of the gold projects, and the other is a past producing open pit heap leach. Brought out what we thought was meaningful news to the company, and the market continued to shrug its shoulders. But within our team saw tremendous battery metals experience. So in addition to my background, we've got 2 directors who have been involved in significant transactions for the benefit of the shareholder, in Paul Fornazari and Patrick Highsmith. Paul was a founder and director for Lithium Americas, and then stepped off that board and was a founder and director for Neolithium, which got taken out last year for $940 million US. And Patrick was the CEO and director for Lithium One back between 2009 2012, before it got taken up by Galaxy. So as a team, we had a lot of battery metals experience. We started having conversations with some of the Asian battery groups. Their ask was not just about the cobalt, but could we find other battery metals and strategic metals? And so reached into our Rolodex of relationships, and we were able to make that pursuit a reality, and announcing the first acquisition in James Bay, right along the Trans-Tega Highway, directly north and adjacent to Patriot at the Corvette, and then directly inset. It's almost like a jigsaw puzzle piece with how we fit in around Winsome's Canset. So they're on our western flank, and Patriot's directly south of us. So we since have added to that land package, and now about 415 square kilometers of what we think are crucial ground, and poised for a good discovery of magnitude.
That's great. Jonathan, just looking through the deck, I noticed you've got some pretty deep lithium experience in some of the other board members. You want to just sort of cover this on that ground?
Sure. We 2 weeks ago, we added a new director, Gabriel Pindar. Gabriel he's actually been responsible for involved in 11 mines globally. Was also very well regarded and well experienced in Quebec, having run ArcelorMittal's iron initiatives in the Labrador Trough. He was a founder and COO for Neolithium, so he worked with Paul again, which was taken out. But between all the various transactions, we've been involved in 7 battery metals transactions as a team. And within those transactions, created about $6 billion of value for the shareholder. We believe Idaho Champion will be number 8. We've got the right assets in the right jurisdiction with a team who can deliver those results and bring a win to the shareholder. So this 2023 is going to be an impactful year for us as investors, because we are investors. We have all written checks into the company. We own roughly 30% of the company. Gabriel, on his way in the front door, coming on the board, also wrote a 7-figure check. So we put our money where our mouth is, and it's about respecting the capital of the investor.
Yeah, that's always a huge endorsement for early stage projects. So just looking at your land package, excluding what's happening now on transactions, I mean, you literally piece together from Winsome right through to Patriot along in that entire. You've done the airborne mag, and you've mobilized the geologists to go out and do some mapping and so on. What's the kind of timeline that shareholders and prospective investors can look at in terms of ideally getting a drill in the ground?
Sure. That's our ambition and certainly our expectation. So we did an airborne program last year in the fall while we were finalizing the acquisition. We actually were able to get the helicopter up. We did an airborne LiDAR and air mag. We will do additional airborne this spring. That only covered 161 square kilometers of the 415 we now control. So we will be doing more airborne. We've now mobilized a team of 20 to prepare to go out into the field at spring breakup. So that'll be late May. We've locked down a camp for 20. We'll have the crews going out in 2 shifts, sampling and mapping the entirety of the ground. We will then be submitting a drill permit. We've been told by the Quebec government we can expect a drill permit in 60 days. So our expectation is to have the data back from the sampling program from the spring program mid to late summer, submit that drill permit, and look to have the drill turning this fall as winter sets in, and looking to make that discovery this coming fall. So 2023. Again, we didn't buy these projects to inventory them. We bought them to make a discovery, and that's our ambition, and that's what we expect to see. The same rock units that is Winsome, the same rock units that is Patriot, are the same rock units we see on our ground. So it's a matter of getting in and doing the grunt work in the geology, and then coming in with real drill targets, which we expect to have.
And I'm assuming you are seeing some surface exposure.
So we were chasing the snow flying last fall with the helicopter. We have historic reports both from the groups we bought the ground from, but also from the Quebec geologic surveys. We know that there's pegmatites across our ground, significant pegmatites across the ground. The multi-million-dollar question that we need to have answered this year is, are they going to be lithium-bearing spodumene? So we have historic reports. We've seen within the airborne program, and that's why our geologist was so aggressive with me to go out and seek more ground and get more ground, was as they were seeing the data coming back from that helicopter program, they felt we needed to increase our land package. We also wanted to have continuity and be contiguous, and taking advantage of the infrastructure, having that Trans-Taiga road right through the heart of the property, having the power lines there, all lead to taking a discovery through to a mining decision, which is what we're expecting to do as a company in the coming years.
Are there any weather limitations in the region, or?
Well, I mean, you deal with the harshness of winter, but that's actually when it's better to work in the field because everything's frozen. There will be at spring breakup, probably it'll be pretty wet, and the black flies are big enough. They'd be like the monkeys in Wizard of Oz, big enough to carry you away. So I'm appreciative of our geos want to go in the field during the black fly season, but no, in terms of 12-month access, it's a function of capital. You can get in, but there are sensitivities around different hunt seasons and movement of animals through the different seasons, but that's short periods of time. Well, I think it's important for the investor to know cash position. We currently have $2.3 million. We have about $15 million of warrants that we can call that have call features on them. So we do have the ability to self-finance this without having to come back to the market. We have had a good surge of interest with the announcements of the lithium projects in Quebec. With the name change and the marketing and branding of that, we'll be out doing a lot of investor forums. So if anybody sees this interview today and presentation today, be aware that we're going to be out marketing on the road. Happy to meet face to face and update investors, and hopefully welcome them as shareholders as we move forward in the days ahead.
Well, that's great. And so, Jonathan, you and I know each other 15 years. You approached me in November. We've gotten involved as shareholders and advisors to the company. Rodney and I have had great success recently with Winsome Resources, catching the company before it started to drill, and are looking kind of to rinse and repeat with some other highly prospective companies like yours. And this is the hottest area in lithium, I think, this James Bay region. That's why, in part, we're putting on this conference. And from Matt Fernley at the outset, how to value, hard rock companies. We've been saying all along, in a strong market, bullish market, the greatest value is high risk, but the highest beta to a high beta theme is at the drill bit. So from a 20 million market value Canadian, which is largely underpinned by your cobalt assets, which we didn't discuss, too much here. But why don't you just take a minute to kind of discuss those? But basically, we think that the prospectivity of what's in Quebec is valued at very low. And you may also want to talk about, do you have any other listing plans, outside of Canada?
Sure. I'll start with Idaho, and then I'll speak to our corporate strategy. I think that coincides with possible future listings. In Idaho is what a lot of investors may not know, especially if they're new to the theme of cobalt. Idaho is one of 3 places in the world where cobalt's the primary metal, not usually a complementary or secondary metal. And so in that case, you've got a unique geologic setting. Idaho has North America's only producing cobalt mine, and that's directly adjacent to us in the cobalt belt. That's Jervois Mining, which is an ASX listed company. They announced production in October last year. We sit with 4 distinct properties, one of which is called Twin Peaks. That's a past producing mine. It produced in the 1920s and again in the 1930s. We made a discovery at surface last year in a sampling program. We discovered a new copper vein system at surface. We expect to be drilling there this year. As we look at how we provide value for the shareholder, one of the things that we've talked about internally is, with a discovery in cobalt projects, and then we expect to have a discovery in Quebec on our lithium ground. Having those 2 discoveries, we would consider doing a spin out, creating a second company, one focused on the cobalt and then one focused on the lithium, and doing that, giving our shareholders a second lottery ticket. Again, I talk about as an investor because we are investors, and my job as CEO is how do we seek value for the shareholder. And I own a half a dozen to 8 ASX companies in my own portfolio. And when I look at the value of those stocks versus me just being listed in Canada, there's a huge disconnect. If we were already an ASX listed company, we'd probably have a 60 million market cap, not a 20 million market cap. And so part of our ambition and initiative this year is to seek an ASX listing, to be on the same playing field as Winsome and Patriot. Certainly the inbound calls we've received from Australian corporates, but also Australian investors in terms of how they can participate in the opportunity of Idaho Champion, we think it makes sense to pursue that listing. So that's a process we've been told is 6 to 12 months. Those conversations are well established and are underway in terms of how we move that forward. So if it was up to me, we'd already be listed there, but it's not just up to me. There is an application process, but we will be undertaking that process this year. We want to be on this playing field and giving investors that are keen on the James Bay an opportunity to buy directly. And we think we offer a tremendous value to them at a 20 million market cap.
Okay, that's great. And the path you just articulated is the same path that Patriot took to list in Australia, and that did take a little bit longer than expected. But good things come to those who wait. For the Patriot shareholders, Winsome shareholders, and again, hopefully the same will be replicated here for a newly renamed, at some point, Champion Battery Metals. Thank you very much, Jonathan, for joining our first ever conference, Canada Rocks, and look forward to following your progress.
Appreciate all your support and inviting me to the conference. Look forward to the follow-up post-conference, and I hope it's a success for everybody.